Have you ever seen your dog suddenly freeze, change direction, or become completely focused on something, and wondered what just happened? You might think your dog is being dramatic, but sometimes your dog is switching into a completely different behavioral state, an instinctive mode designed to deal with uncertainty, danger, or sudden change. And the strange part is, you may not notice the switch until it's already happened. Picture this. Your dog is relaxed. Maybe they're lying on the floor, sniffing around, or casually following you through the house. Everything is normal. Then something changes. A loud crash. A strange smell. Someone suddenly moves. A door slams. Your dog stops. For a moment, they don't look like the same dog. Their body becomes still. Their head changes position. Their ears become more focused. Their attention locks onto one thing. That tiny pause is important, because before many dogs decide what to do next, they gather information. Humans often react immediately. We hear a noise and instinctively turn toward it. But dogs experience the world through an incredibly powerful sensory system, especially smell and hearing. A sound that seems meaningless to you can carry information your dog doesn't have to consciously think about. And this creates the first surprising part of emergency mode. Your dog may not actually know that something is dangerous. They may simply know that something is different. That's a huge distinction. A strange noise doesn't automatically mean fear. A sudden movement doesn't automatically mean aggression. Your dog may simply enter a heightened state of attention because their normal prediction of the environment has been interrupted. Think about your dog's normal day. The same rooms, the same doors, the same voices, the same feeding routine, the same walks. Dogs become incredibly familiar with patterns. Their brains are constantly predicting what happens next. When reality suddenly doesn't match that prediction, attention increases. That's why a dog who was completely relaxed 5 seconds ago can suddenly look like they're investigating a mystery. But here's where it gets really interesting. The first thing your dog does after that change can tell you more than the initial reaction. Some dogs move toward the sound, some move away, some freeze, some look toward their owner, and some start scanning the environment. These aren't random reactions. They're different strategies for dealing with uncertainty. A confident dog might investigate. A cautious dog might create distance. A highly alert dog might monitor everything around them. And another dog might immediately look at you. That last one is especially fascinating because your reaction can become information. If your dog hears something strange and looks at you, they may be checking your body language, facial expression, movement, or voice for clues about whether the situation is safe. It's almost like your dog is asking without words, "Should I be worried?" And your answer doesn't have to be verbal. If you stay calm, your dog may settle. If you become tense, your dog may remain alert. This doesn't mean dogs can magically read your mind. It means dogs are highly responsive to observable human behavior, and they learn associations between situations and outcomes. Your body becomes part of the information in the room. But there's another layer most owners don't notice. Sometimes the most important moment isn't when your dog enters this heightened state. It's when they come out of it. Imagine your dog hears a strange sound. They freeze. They investigate. They realize nothing is happening. And then they shake their body. Maybe they stretch. Maybe they sniff the floor. Maybe they suddenly walk away and return to whatever they were doing. That transition is fascinating because dogs don't remain equally alert forever. Once the uncertainty is resolved, their behavior can shift back toward normal. That little shake or reset-like movement can sometimes occur after excitement or stress, but it shouldn't automatically be interpreted as a specific emergency reset button. Dog behavior is contextual, and that's important because viral dog content often turns every behavior into one universal secret meaning. Real canine behavior is much more interesting than that. The same action can mean different things depending on what happened before it. A dog shaking after a bath is obviously different from a dog shaking immediately after a stressful encounter. Context changes the meaning. And if you start watching context instead of isolated behaviors, you'll begin understanding your dog in a completely different way. Now imagine you're outside with your dog. Everything seems normal. Then your dog suddenly stops walking. You might think they're being stubborn, but don't rush to that conclusion. Your dog may have detected something you haven't. A scent, a distant sound, another animal, a change in the environment, or simply something unfamiliar. Their world contains sensory information that isn't equally available to you. This is one reason dogs can appear to know something is happening before humans notice it. They aren't predicting the future. They're detecting information earlier. And sometimes that creates a strange illusion. It feels like your dog knows something you don't. But in reality, their senses may simply be giving them a different version of the same environment. And then comes the moment every owner recognizes. Your dog suddenly becomes intensely alert, and you say, "What are you looking at?" You look around. Nothing. Your dog keeps staring. You see an empty hallway. Your dog hears something. You hear silence. And for a few seconds, it feels like your dog has access to another world. But their world really is different. Their hearing range is broader than ours in important ways, and their sense of smell is dramatically more sensitive. That doesn't mean every unexplained reaction has a mysterious cause. Sometimes dogs simply notice ordinary environmental details before we do, and that's what makes their emergency mode so fascinating. It isn't a supernatural sixth sense. It's an information advantage. But there's one more behavior you should watch carefully. When your dog becomes suddenly alert, look at where their attention goes after the first few seconds. Do they keep focusing on one location? Do they move closer? Do they create distance? Do they look toward you? Or do they lose interest almost immediately? That sequence matters, because the first reaction tells you that something changed. The next reaction tells you how your dog is evaluating that change. And this is where you can become a better observer. Instead of asking, "Why is my dog acting weird?" ask, "What happened immediately before this? What sound occurred? Who entered the room? What changed? Where was your dog looking? What did their body do next? And how long did the behavior last?" You're no longer guessing. You're observing. And over time, you'll start recognizing your dog's individual patterns. Because your dog doesn't have one universal emergency mode. They have their own personality, their own experiences, their own sensitivities, their own history. One dog might become still. Another might pace. Another might seek their owner. Another might investigate. Another might bark. And some may show very subtle signs that are easy to miss. If this is changing the way you look at your dog, hit like and subscribe. Because the more closely you watch ordinary behavior, the more you realize how much communication happens without a single word. Now here's the emotional part. Your dog doesn't need you to understand every signal perfectly. They need you to notice. That's different. You don't have to become a canine behavior expert overnight. You just need to slow down enough to recognize when your dog's normal pattern changes. Because sometimes your dog isn't being difficult. They're processing. They're evaluating. They're trying to understand what just happened. And when you respond calmly instead of immediately correcting them, you give them something incredibly valuable. Time. Time to process the environment. Time to gather information. Time to decide whether the situation is safe. And sometimes, that's exactly what they need. But remember one important thing. If your dog suddenly develops intense fear, aggression, disorientation, unusual repetitive behavior, or major changes in behavior that persist without an obvious reason, don't assume it's simply an instinctive mode. Sudden behavioral changes can sometimes be related to pain, illness, anxiety, or environmental stress, and a veterinarian or qualified behavior professional can help determine what's going on. Because understanding your dog isn't about turning every strange behavior into a dramatic secret. It's about learning to notice the difference between normal behavior and meaningful change. And that may be the real secret behind your dog's emergency mode. Your dog isn't suddenly becoming a different animal. They're revealing a part of themselves that usually stays quiet. The part that watches, listens, smells, processes, predicts, and waits for enough information before deciding what to do. So the next time your dog suddenly freezes in the middle of an ordinary moment, don't immediately laugh it off. Pause. Look around. Watch their body. Notice what changed. And most importantly, watch what happens next. Because sometimes the most interesting thing about your dog isn't the behavior you see. It's the invisible information that caused it. Your dog is constantly experiencing a world you can't completely see, hear, or smell. And every once in a while, they give you a tiny glimpse into it. That's why your dog's strange moments aren't always random. Sometimes, they're the moments when your dog is paying attention to a world you haven't noticed yet.